we are going to take our sides that have now been pre-bent and we're going to fit them into a mold and make them just the way we want them. Then we're going to put in 2 blocks, top and bottom, to hold those sides. So I have here the mold and I have my sides. I need to set these in. And you'll note that already I've got an issue because I'm hitting right there. Notice that this has a little gap here. That's on purpose. So this side comes all the way up and then this side comes into it. So it's just nice to have, convenient to have that there. So I'm going to have to cut this off right about there to start with. The same thing goes with this one. And depending on where you're at, this comes around and this is going to need to be trimmed about right there. We have 0.093 inches where that side comes through. So I'm going to trim a little bit off of this too. Sometimes your side will come out here, sometimes it'll come back here. And if that's the case, we can work with that also. But generally you'll need to trim a little bit off. So I'm going to trim it right to there. We're going to do that at the miter saw. Here's the mark that I made. I'm going to lay this down on the miter saw. My hand needs to come back at least 5 inches, or 5 finger widths, excuse me. Right, so I'm back in here. And I'm just putting the side right up against the fence. So it's flat here and up against the fence and feels pretty stable. Then I'm going to bring it down. I'm going to overcut it, cut it big, and then sneak up on it until I make the final cut right on the line. This one, I need to cut off about that much. Same thing. Now this one's poking up a long ways, and that's okay. Lay this flat on the bed, this tight against the fence. Notice where my hands is, it's away from it. And same thing, I'm going to sneak up on that cut. Check it on our form. We should get 2 blocks. One goes on the bottom, one goes on the top. Here. Notice here that this block is flat and flat there, so it's a 90-degree angle. That's where it's going to get glued into. The bottom one is not flat. It has a curve on it, and it matches the curve of the form. So these can't be interchanged. This has been cut down now, so it should slide into that little slot there really easy. That feels pretty good. And then this one is going to butt up next to it. Okay, now what I need to do is put clamps around the form, around the outside, to pull it in tight. It's got its approximate shape, but I want it to be a little more shapely. So to do that, I've cut myself a bunch of blocks from a scrap out of the garbage can, and it's going to protect my side a little bit from the harsh jaw of the clamp. It's also going to distribute the pressure so that it clamps the whole side into the form as opposed to only right where the clamp is. Now notice this now, how snug and tight that is right around that curve, which is beautiful. There. I want to get it as close as I can. It doesn't have to be perfect. Nice. And it looks good. Okay, now let's do the other side. Maybe one more right here would be a good thing, although I'll tell you, that feels pretty tight already. So let's just go to this side. Now, if possible, I want to have this piece come in and die into that piece in a nice snug way. If your piece is a little bit shy and doesn't quite make it, let me see if I can simulate it. So something like this, that's okay too. We can make that work. This will go in and clamp just the same. We'll have a little gap there that we'll need to fill later, but we can fill it. Okay, I want this to be good and snug. And to do that, I'm going to clamp this first and get that joint nice and good. Then I'll finish off the rest of the side. I'm going to put a clamp this way, holding it tight to the form here, and a clamp that way, holding it tight there. I can see I'm going to need to move that one. This clamp's a little more awkward, but it still works. Like, notice how that's coming in nice and tight there. That feels good. Okay, so there and then tight there. And eventually when we glue it, we'll also put one down there and across there. So it'll have 4 clamps on it. Once that's in, taken care of, it's just the way I want it. Now I'm going to start snugging in the side, and we'll measure at the bottom of the guitar where it needs to be trimmed. I can see that my side's high. See if you can look in here on the bottom. See how it's not touching the table. Over here it is. There it's not. I don't like that. I got to bring that down. So I'm going to loosen up my clamps. See if I can. Oh, there it goes. It slid right down in. That's nice. Okay, let's take a look at this now. Look how far this is lifted there. I've got to fix that, and it probably starts all the way back in here, so it's easy to let this drift, and I just don't want to do that. I want to keep it down nice and flat. Much better. Much better. Okay, bringing it tight here to the center, and I'm going to make a mark right in line with the seam of the form. That's where I'm going to trim it on the miter saw. Pull my sides out. I'll go cut them on the miter saw, then I'll bring them back, refit them, and glue the blocks in. Have a little excess like this or bigger, sometimes you get a little bigger piece, I'd hold on to them. Since it's the same board and the same color, it can be used to make any repairs that we might need to later, and they're small enough to keep, so let's hold on to those. Okay, let's take care of this first. It's always the most challenging. And I'm going to put a clamp into the cutaway portion. That will let me work with this side without any inhibition. Looks good. On the top block, I'm going to dry fit that in like I did before. Right, remember I want this come into here. Nice 90-degree angle there. Okay, now I can put in the rest of my sides. Notice that this side is pretty close in line with the seam of the form. That's good, I like that. Now let's get this side to fit, and I can clamp it in, or I can do this little trick. I put a shim right about there, and then this tends to pull back, so let me show you how that happens, right? So I put that in right there, and as I bring this back, notice how I can just bring it all the way in. Nice. Pops in just like that. This can be removed, and since it's right where I want it, I don't even need to put any clamps on that side. So bottom block is going to go right there. Let's do a little test. We'll dry fit. Good. We'll glue this one first, since it's ready, and then we'll go up and glue that one. Centered. Put one high and one low, nice and snug. Really tight there. And I don't need this one anymore. Close to the bottom. good and snug there too. Okay. I'm going to look at the bottom. That looks good. Right, notice how that's a nice tight seam all the way across, like that. Now the top block. Bring that off the corner. Those are not critical. I think I'm going to leave that one in though. Now this one gets glue both here and there. High. I'm not doing too tight just yet. I got to get this other clamp on. Goes right there. Oh yeah. Right, tight here, tight there. Now I've got to do the same thing on the bottom. And one right there. Pull it in. Tight. Good and tight. Leave that one in there. Okay, come take a look. So tight there, tight there. 4 clamps, 2 holding it that way, 2 holding it that way. Let's give that at least 15 minutes to set up. It's a good joint that ought to hold it, and we can take the clamps off. If you release the clamps, because of the pressures, and sometimes they're not perfect fits, if you need to leave it in longer, a few hours, then do so that that joint will dry tight. Don't forget to put your name on it on the inside.